Welcome back, my Mystery Hunter followers. This is the 5th episode that we are doing on the murders of Carole Ann Macwilliams and her brother-in-law, Jack Macwilliams, 1969. I am going to summarize for you guys what I spent 3 hours recording yesterday. Why? Because about 10 minutes into the recordings and all of the work that I did, we lost the audio. However, last night we did something that you guys are going to want to see. My buddy Doug and I hopped in the truck and we went out to the site of the murders, the actual bridge where these guys were brought, shot in the head, and dumped in the river. And we did a spirit box session. And I will tell you guys, I have not looked at any of the files yet on the computer. Doug's eyes were as big as saucers because he heard what I heard. We heard numerous things such as bullets. Carole came through, her voice, her name, like 6 times. It said Jack numerous times. It said Doug's name. It said my name. There was all kinds of things. Bridge, shooting. There was all kinds of stuff that we heard without putting any of this on the computer. So I'm going to summarize the questions that we ended up asking on the bridge last night were brought about because I ended up investigating. There were 2 things that brought down Donald Kelly and why he was the only one that ended up being charged in this case. And that is the testimony of the 2 girls, his girlfriend and another girl who was at this party that they were at. The 4 men disappeared to go get more booze. And I say 4 men because the mysterious Jerry Roy was part of that crew. I don't really know who he was. He was a guy who showed up at the party. He's the guy who brought the guns to the party. He left with the other 3 men. When they came back, the other 3 guys were saying, according to the witnesses, that they had just offed Jack and Carole. Why did Jerry Roy never get tried for this? I don't know. He was there. Was he there at the bridge? I don't know. But it was the testimony of Patricia Fragamini, who was Donald Kelly's girlfriend, and this other girl, Nicole Gladu, 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 who both testified, and this is important. They testified that when the men came back, they immediately told the girls to get back in the apartment. They had work to do, that they had to tear the walls apart in the apartment and dig out all of the bullets that had been fired at a vase during the party earlier in the night. Because now they had killed these people with those same handguns, or the one handgun, a .38 caliber. None of this makes any sense. Because this is what they testified in 1976. The murders had occurred in 1969. At the deposition phase of this trial, Patricia Fragamini didn't say anything about them tearing the wall apart, digging out bullets. So she changed her story. She also didn't say anything about Donald having blood on his shirt back in 1969. But at the trial, she said he had blood on his shirt. So her story changed quite a bit. There was inference that the police had threatened her, basically tortured her, took her in numerous times, and convinced her that Donald had done this and that she was going to tell this story. That was one theory of what happened. That they were bullying her into this statement to get Donald, okay? That was stated right by the lawyers. You guys are going to have to take my word for all of this stuff that I'm telling you because it's in those papers, and I spent 3 hours recording and showing you guys the papers yesterday. Pointless. We have no audio. So take my word for it. You can go in the North Bay Nugget and look up. There's 30-some pages, more than 30-some pages of articles in there, and you can get all this information. Anyway, this is what sunk Kelly, was that testimony. Nicole Gladu said the same things. Here's what the funny part is about that is that the police found a .38 caliber bullet in a shoebox on site in this apartment where they had the party. Okay, so if these guys meticulously went through the walls, pulling out bullets and replaced the wall, why would they leave a shoebox with this bullet in there that matches the 2 that were found in the heads of Jack and Carole? So there was also this question of, did Detective Black, who was one of the leading investigators on this case, did he plant that evidence? The next thing that sunk Kelly was the forensic expert stated that this gun had no rifling in it. Rifling is the spiral grooves in the barrel of a gun that make the bullet shoot true and faster and straighter. Okay, that's why you rifle a barrel. Well, this handgun had no rifling. So there was the testimony of the two girls who stated, Donald Kelly said he shot the people. They came back, they removed bullets from the walls and all this other thing. Now, both of these girls were tore down by the defense. They were heroin addicts. They were prostitutes. They were low-life thugs who were grifters themselves. They were stealing. There was 200 house robberies in North Bay 2 weeks prior to these murders. They were all part of it, these guys. They were all working together. And that there was rumors that the police had actually spent thousands of dollars on these two girls, buying them clothes, dropping charges against them. The clothes wasn't a rumor. That was proven. The superior officers to the four guys that were working this case, actually, it was documented that they had given them money to spend on these girls. Winterio tickets, new hairdos, new outfits. They dressed them up for the court. So all of that was brought into question, okay? So they weren't very reliable witnesses. And, they were actually themselves wanted for, one of them had planned to kill Donald Kelly. Imagine that, And now we're supposed to believe what they say? The other thing that was never admitted to was that anyone had called and given a tip that these bodies were floating in the river. That point bugs me. That's one of the most obtrusive points in this whole case, is that the police were the ones to find that body. Detective Black had found evidence on the bridge, scuff marks, where he said it was a man and a woman had tried to run, and the other three officers who were there, they didn't see that evidence. So it was like this guy was trying extremely hard to find evidence where there was none. And all of this was brought up in, the closing arguments by the defense lawyer. Two more things that are really important here, guys. When Donald Kelly broke out of prison, there was a $5,000 reward for his capture or information resulting in his capture. That went unclaimed. So it was rumored that the girls got that $5,000 from the police. Then, this wasn't a rumor either. Clacky Plagisi, who was Jack Macwilliams' father, held a gun to somebody's head, I'm not sure, and this was witnessed by many people, and he said, I am going to get to the bottom of this, and I am going to pay $5,000 for this to be resolved. That money apparently went to Patricia Fragamini. Now, this was brought up by the defense attorneys. The day that they were in court, she was being comforted by Carole Ann Macwilliams' sister. It was almost like when they took a break, it was almost like they were reminding her, hey, you've got a job to do. Don't you break down. You do this. And that point was brought up by the defense lawyer saying, oh, really? What did you talk about? Did you realize that was her sister you were just talking to? And of course she said, no, I don't remember meeting her before. It was all very suspicious. So there was an extra $10,000 on the table that these girls were reputed to have claimed by giving their testimony against Donald Kelly. So that's the summary you guys are getting. Let's jump to the only part I have left where we have audio. Let's go do the night investigation and see what the spirit box has to say. All right, guys, it feels like it's heading for about -20 tonight, and I'm just waiting for my buddy Doug to show up. I wanted to show you guys the full moon up there tonight. It's cold, it's clear, and I've got plans. So we're gonna bring 2 cameras, and when we get out at the bridge to do our investigation, when we're gonna run our apps, I wanna run the Hack Shack, I want to run Necrophonic. I'm gonna leave the second camera running in the truck with the Hack Shack running beside it. So we have the chance to catch double responses tonight, okay? And then Doug and I will be out here in the freezing cold, wandering around, taking a look at the bridge and the scene of the 1969 murders of Carole Ann and Jack. So that's my plan. Let's see what we can get. All right, so we're on Woodfield Station and we're gonna drive through. I'm just gonna record on this camera as we're going. But I'm 90% sure where we're going. There's only one place the river crosses this road. And like I say, guys that were bringing people out here to murder weren't going to mess around with walking people any distance.
Be right at the bridge.
To do it and get rid of them, it'd be right at the bridge, shoot them, dump them. And the forensic evidence showed that there was a fresh marking out of the bridge, which they tested, and said there was a high concentration of lead there. So it was like somebody had shot and missed. Ricochet off the skull, something.
Yeah.
You know, the strange thing about this case, too, one of the things that still bothers me is that the police were the ones to find the bodies out here. Yes. And they never would say why. I mean, we're not close to town, right? We're, 20 kilometers away from town?
Well, and there was probably less people living out here at the time, too, eh? A couple farms or something?
Absolutely. There'd hardly be anybody.
Yeah.
And for them to be out here,
what led them here so fast?
They wouldn't say. They just said they were doing a search. And so...
Somebody talked.
And again, this leads to a couple of things. They wouldn't say why they were out here. It was never brought up. So there's two theories here. One is that Jack or Carole were informants. And the police knew, maybe they were following them that night. Maybe they even had a wire on somebody. Who knows?
Yeah.
And they knew, but they couldn't protect these guys. They were murdered out of the blue.
Yes.
And then they were like, oh, shit, what are we going to do now? These guys were just killed under our watch, basically.
Yes.
Let's sweep this under the rug. It never happened. They weren't our informants, is one theory. The second one is that Donald Kelly said stuff was stolen that would hinder his case. And when I asked the spirit box about that, it said a tip. Okay. And then it said bodies found in the drink so fast. And it was basically alluding to the fact that the cops were the ones that came out here and found the bodies. And
yeah, that's odd.
And so today, just today, after weeks of researching this, I found an article from 1996, 20 years after the trial, in which the original officer, Detective Black, said he was recounting what had gone on, and he said, yeah, it was a Monday morning, and I got a call and a tip that bodies were found in the river. And that was the only place I ever saw anything about that, and it wasn't until 20 years after the fact. And nobody else would raise an eyebrow because nobody has ever investigated this after the fact.
Yeah. You make up a good story, everybody just accepts it and moves on. So, well, it's a little different today, but years ago.
Yeah, the police were the authority. You didn't question it.
No, you respected it.
And so this Detective Black, and I don't want to say that he was or wasn't because I don't know, but there was also, they were hinting that maybe he had even planted, there was one bullet that tied the gun that shot Jack and Carole to those guys at the party that night, and it was found in a shoebox in the apartment where they had had a big party and they were shooting guns in the apartment.
You think they'd have dumped it?
Well, so they apparently went through all the trouble of taking the bullets out of the wall because they'd been shooting out a vase.
Yeah.
And they replaced part of the wall. But then you're absolutely right. You're nailing it.
Yeah.
They left one bullet in the shoebox?
No.
And there was 2 photos of the shoebox saying, hey, here's evidence A. We found the shoebox. Here it is with the lid on it. This is where we found it. Here's exhibit B. Here's the shoebox we found with no lid on it in a different position.
Well, and the forensics have changed so much in the last decade.
Well, you want to get into that?
Yeah.
They called in a forensic expert.
At that time, okay.
At that time, he was a gun expert, and there was no rifling in this handgun. That
So was it black powder they were using, or?
Nope. So how they identified that these slugs came from the same gun was that the barrel had been cut, and he said that there was a burr on the end of the barrel. And that burr had put a mark in all 3 of these slugs that they had. One from Jack, one from Carole, and one from the shoebox. And to me, I did take forensics.
Yeah.
And I am a gun guy. I shoot, I hunt, I own guns.
Yes.
If there was a burr in front of that barrel, and a 3,000 foot per second,
you think it'd have split the end of it?
Lead comes out of here, it would have knocked that burr off there, pushed it out of the way, right?
Well,
you would think.
Yeah, that too.
So when the next bullets come out, they're not going to be marked the same. And this guy swore up and down that all 3 of those bullets, 100%, no chance that they didn't, all came from the same gun.
I'd be surprised that it was, are they saying it was with a rifle and not a handgun?
No, a handgun, a 38 caliber handgun.
Yeah, well, 38's not very big, so why would they be cutting the barrel down? That doesn't make sense.
I don't know. It doesn't make sense. There was also a 32 that the guys were shooting. There was 2 guns in the apartment that night.
Mm-hmm.
And they found 7 other bullets from the 32 in that apartment. So if the guys had been meticulously taking slugs out of the wall, as was suggested,
Yeah.
they wouldn't know which slugs came from which gun. They would have just found one and took it, right? They would have took everything. So that whole scene of those guys removing bullets doesn't make any sense.
No.
And this was the most damning part of the evidence that the girlfriend said. Well, they came back and ripped the wall apart, pulling these slugs out. But in the deposition, 6 years before the actual trial, she hadn't mentioned that. And so they just said, it doesn't make sense. And even the other guys, they had said that there was a fight in the apartment the week before, and somebody threw a fish tank into the wall. And that's why the part of the wall was replaced. And if you kind of take that into consideration, that all these other bullets were still in the apartment, that kind of makes more sense.
Like at that time, I don't think they had gyprock.
No, it was a sheet of plywood, they said.
Okay.
They had put up a new sheet of plywood. And then the accused were actually surprised when they showed photos of half a sheet of plywood on the wall. And they said, well, we don't know what that's all about, because we replaced the wall that was broken by the fish tank with a full sheet of plywood. Well, I find it strange that you are available tonight to come out and investigate.
Yeah, life is usually pretty busy, so it was the right place at the right time, that's for sure.
Okay, so we've got a house right there and another house right here. I'm going to have to suppose that none of these would have been here in the 60s.
No.
Because you wouldn't pull up and start shooting people on this road just down here if there were houses that close.
Yeah,
Why would
even
you
in the country though, like?
Why would you drive all the way out here to get away from people and then shoot somebody right 100 yards from a house?
But a gunshot in the night's not going to be questioned,
Out here, not
No.
as much, no.
Today is different, but
Okay, right there. That is the bridge right there. The North River is going to cross underneath this road right here. And this is where they would have pulled up. And I'm assuming they would have been driving from the opposite way. They would have been coming from North Bay towards us, pulled up here. Okay, so we'll start the Hack Shack on this app here, on this phone. And we'll just leave that right there recording as Doug and I get out. Just said something. I'm just analyzing the Hack Shack footage from the truck last night. Doug and I left the recorder in the truck running by itself for 25 minutes. There is an actual EVP. Very faintly, I'm making my way through. I can hear a woman's voice on the video camera, not coming through the Hack Shack. She says a sentence, there's something, it's very distant. And then immediately after that, Hack Shack says something. I haven't analyzed it yet. I'm going to play that for you guys now. This is mind-blowing stuff. A female voice. Who do you think that is? It's got to be Corky, Khaki, Carole Macwilliams. What is she saying? Can I figure it out? I don't know. But this is real. Okay, you are about to hear a Hack Shack response, which we just heard a couple of minutes ago. No, this is not deja vu. It is not the same response. This is the 17-minute mark, and we got the almost exact same Hack Shack reply. Earlier it said, because they were shot. Now this one says, cause they were shot. I know some of you guys are going to say, hey, that's a canned response from the Hack Shack, but guys, I have never heard that response before. It's contextual. It makes sense. These guys were shot on that bridge. Maybe the spirits just want to get that point across because they said it twice.